Welcome to the Centre for Brexit Studies YouTube channel. Today we're joined by Senior Fellow Dr. Stephen McCabe. So Steve, we're now into the second week of many of us working from home and adjusting to a variety of lifestyle changes. How has it been impacting you so far?
Well, I mean, I've been used to working on my own and home working for quite a while, so it's not quite such a big wrench. I know for some people it will be, because of course they've been used to the discipline of being in office from whatever it might be, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 and 6 o'clock at night, and sometimes far longer than that. So I do understand the psychological impact from being isolated, and the advice I'd give to anyone is it's a matter of knowing what your priorities are, being disciplined, sticking to things that you do. I mean, the one thing about going to work, which I don't need to elaborate on, is it's the whole social thing. But of course, that there is a curious juxtaposition between the social and the work bit, and it's always important that the work gets done. So I find that being isolated is a good way to get on with the priorities, because you can concentrate at the job in hand. But I do appreciate it. It's a very big change for a lot of people. And whether this has a long impact in terms of going forward beyond the current crisis, we shall see.
So Health Secretary Matt Hancock has said today that people who are ignoring COVID-19 advice are being selfish. Do you think that people are being ignorant, or are people just struggling to keep up on top of the, with all the advice daily? There's so much advice, especially obviously daily press conferences. It seems to be changing fairly often, really, what is allowed, what isn't allowed anymore. So, do you think they're being ignorant and selfish, or do you think they're just struggling to just keep on top of everything? Or do you think Boris Johnson needs to be more clear of what actually is allowed and what isn't?
It's really difficult in many ways. I think there's a combination of lots of things, possibly ignorance, possibly I wouldn't call it contempt, but just and blasé attitude that somehow this won't affect us. I mean, the reality is that if you look at the statistics, and there's a lot of information available on the likes of YouTube, and I'm being sent demonstrations of quite how the infection rate can rack up, because of course this is highly contagious. And I saw something on a show which said that within a month, one person who's if it doubles every becomes 1 million people or umpteen million people. And of course then we're into the fact that this thing, we don't know whether it's a mortality rate to get to the really difficult aspect this of 1 or 2%, because of course the statistics are all over the place. I heard it being said on the radio this morning that maybe people don't realize quite how serious it is to be out and about, and hence the fact that and the report that was produced last week by I think it was Imperial College said that unless something was done in terms of the social aspects, then we would be very quickly up to the worst case scenario, which they're still looking at 250,000 deaths. And somebody said on the radio, and I was listening earlier on, it's only when the body bags start stacking up that people realise that there are huge consequences. And so trying to the reality is that it's not so much about stopping infection as we appreciate. It's trying to as the expression goes, smoothen the curve, because of course what we don't want is our health service to be overwhelmed, in which case they're having to make life and death decisions on the basis of purely age. I've seen that, for instance, Israel this morning, they said that anybody over 60 will not be treated as a priority. They'll look after those under 60. So yeah, I think that there is a misunderstanding of the reality of this, because of course so far, and we let's face it, this thing has been ticking along for the last 3 months by and large, since we first heard of it in China. But of course it was something that was far away. We hear about what's going on in Italy, and we're told that we're 2 weeks behind Italy, and there the death rate is up to, is it something like about 5,000? So people do need to be aware that that this is not this is not a joke. This is absolutely real, and could have huge consequences for their own health, and more particularly the health of those around them by transmitting.
So the OECD has said today that the global economy will suffer for years to come because of COVID-19. Who in the UK is going to be worst hit by this, do you think?
Well, I mean, it's difficult to say that. I mean, the OECD quite clearly that they're working on the basis of their best possible intelligence. There is no doubt that certainly for sort of this quarter, the next quarter, probably the whole of 2020, is going to be a bit of a write-off. And of course, a bit like every financial crisis, you get hit by the sort of the initial sort of wave, as it were, and then of course the sort of it's the sort of the ripples and the sort of the when the wave withdraws, that leaves you with all the damage. So I mean, clearly what we can see is that sort of as opposed to 11 or so years ago with the global financial crisis, it's having a similar effect, but in many different ways. And most particularly, the people that we do feel most sorry for is, of course, that those who are working the so-called gig economy, who depend upon the hours as and when, or 0-hour contracts, particularly in the likes of the hospitality trade. Indeed, maybe even in shopping, people will sort of rein in spending. So those people who are utterly dependent upon being paid as and when they're required, as those companies rein back the sort of their expenditure, because of course they're not doing the trade, then what do these people sort of live on? Because that they haven't so far been accounted for by the initiatives that sort of Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, has brought in. Hopefully they will do so, because of course that they've been a very vital part of what goes on, and allowing companies to be sort of very sort of adept, agile is the word, in terms of their expenditure. But again, these people are going to be very hard hit. But I think that there is a sort of potential for the whole, or all of us, to sort of be hit, because of course as the economy goes into decline, which of course it inevitably will do, that has an impact on the tax take. And a whole host of other sort of financial consequences, all of which flows back through the sort of the general economy. I mean, the view, just to say, is that once this thing is over, and of course the big question is, when will it be over? Will it be this year, next year? And probably until we get a vaccine, we won't know for sure, and that could be quite some time. There will be some sort of bounce back. But hey, it's going to leave devastation. I'm already sort of seeing the statistics for the sort of the high street, which was already sort of again teetering anyway, and a lot of companies were sort of in I wouldn't say problems, but finding it difficult. This could be the death knell for sort of many who decide it's just not worth the hassle.
And do you expect the UK to go into lockdown this week, or do you think we will continue like this for as long as we probably can?
Again, a really difficult question, but I think as we see the sort of the pictures of people out and about, the pubs have been closed down, the sort of the restaurants have been closed down, gyms have been closed down, so people are finding different ways to go out and socialise. Again, all I can say is that do I think it'll happen? Well, I think it's highly likely. I think there is a sort of sense that sort of maybe the sort of the great British stoicism and stiff upper lip will get us through. But I do come back to this point that we see what's going on in the likes of Italy and Spain, and so we've sort of seen into the likes of Iran. The mortality rate is ratcheted up pretty quickly, and maybe that's the only way to or a lockdown is the only way to sort of stop this thing sort of spreading. Because of course it may not stop the infection, but of course what we need to do is to sort of have the sort of spike, and that is the problem with sort of something that's increasing exponentially. So I mean it's not something that people will welcome, and it's something that we're not used to. But maybe it's the only way to stop.
Thank you for joining us, Steve, and to those watching, we wish you all the best.